The Navy SEAL was strapped to the stretcher, blood bleeding through the gauze at his side, teeth clenched as medics rushed him down the ER hallway. His K9 stayed tight at the gurney, muscles coiled, eyes tracking every hand that reached too close. Then the dog went rigid, nose lifting, ears snapping forward. A low growl crawled out of its chest. Then the K9 exploded into barking, violent and sharp, yanking the handler hard enough to jerk the stretcher to a halt. "Easy!" the SEAL snapped, breath ragged. "What the hell's wrong with you?" The dog didn't even look back. It tore free and ran, straight across the ER, past doctors, past security, locking onto a scent no one else noticed. It stopped in front of a rookie nurse standing against the wall. Ava. The K9 sat, slowly raised its paw, and saluted her. The SEAL lost it. "Get back here!" He hauled himself off the stretcher, limping, furious, rage spilling out of him as he charged toward her.
"Get the fuck away from my dog, bitch honey!"
Ava lifted her face. He stopped dead. The color drained from his skin. His breath hitched like he'd been punched. He staggered back into the wall, staring at her like he'd just seen a ghost step out of the grave. "No," he whispered. "SEAL Team 9 is long gone." His voice cracked. "Who the hell are you?" If you want to know what happens next, take 2 seconds to subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. These stories survive because you're here. Now, let's go back to the ER. The gurney rattled as it burst through the ER doors, wheels squealing against tile, voices colliding in that familiar, panicked chorus that only comes when blood meets time pressure. The Navy SEAL on the stretcher was strapped down hard, jaw clenched, sweat beading at his temples as dark red soaked steadily through the gauze at his side. He didn't cry out. He didn't beg. He just stared at the ceiling like he was back under something heavier than fluorescent lights. His K9 stayed glued to the gurney, shoulder brushing metal, eyes tracking every hand that reached too fast. The dog's muscles were tight, coiled, alert, not afraid, but ready. The kind of ready that made seasoned medics slow their movements without realizing why. "Vitals," someone shouted. "BP's unstable, but holding. Get Trauma Bay 3 ready." Ava stood near the wall, half shadowed by a supply cart. Light blue scrubs too clean for the chaos unfolding. Rookie badge clipped crooked, blonde hair pulled back tight, not a strand out of place. She wasn't assigned to this case. She wasn't even supposed to be in this hall. No one looked at her twice. The K9 did. At first it was subtle. The dog's head lifted just slightly, nostrils flaring. Then the ears snapped forward, the tail stilled. A low sound crept out of its chest, deep, warning, wrong. Then the dog erupted. Sharp barks ripped through the hall as it yanked against the handler's grip, claws scraping tile hard enough to stop the gurney cold. "Easy," the SEAL snapped, breath ragged as pain cut through his control. "What the hell's wrong with you?" The dog didn't even look back. It tore free and bolted, straight across the ER, past nurses, past security, ignoring shouted commands like they didn't exist. It moved with purpose, nose low, locking onto something no one else could sense. It stopped in front of Ava. She didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't step back. The K9 sat, slow, deliberate. Then it raised its paw, a salute. The hallway froze, monitors kept beeping. Someone dropped a tray. A security guard halfway through drawing his taser just stared. "What the?" a resident whispered. The SEAL exploded. "Get back here!" He fought the straps, fury burning hotter than pain. "That's an order!" The dog didn't budge. The SEAL ripped himself free. Boots hitting the floor unevenly as he staggered forward, rage carrying him when his body couldn't. He shoved past a medic, breathing hard, eyes locked on the dog, and the woman behind it. "Get the fuck away from my dog, bitch!" Ava lifted her face. The words died in his throat. Color drained from his skin so fast it was like someone pulled a plug. His breath hitched once, twice, then came out shallow and fast. He stumbled back, shoulder hitting the wall, eyes wide like he'd just seen something crawl out of a grave. "No," he whispered. The hallway leaned in. "No, that's not possible." The K9 stayed seated, perfect posture, eyes forward. "SEAL Team 9 is long gone," the man said, voice breaking around the words. "We were wiped. Every name crossed out. Every file burned." His gaze flicked back to Ava. and searching her face like it might blur or fade if he blinked too hard. "Who the hell are you?" Ava didn't answer. That was the first thing that unsettled the doctors. Not her silence, but her stillness. She didn't rush to explain. She didn't deny anything. She just knelt, slow and steady, until she was level with the dog. Her hand came up, calm, open, resting lightly against the K9's neck. The growl vanished. The dog leaned into her touch like it had been waiting for it. Ava's voice stayed low, barely there. "Easy," she murmured, not a command, more a memory. The seal slid down the wall to a seated position, hands shaking now, anger gone, replaced by something raw and exposed. "You're dead," he said hoarsely. "They told us you were dead." She swallowed once. "They tell people a lot of things." A charge nurse finally found her voice. "Security, we need—" "No!" one of the trauma surgeons snapped, without looking away from Ava. "Nobody touches that dog." Ava's fingers moved to the injured leg, gentle but precise. She didn't reach for equipment. She didn't call for help. She assessed the limp with her hands and eyes alone, the way people did when tools weren't an option. The K9 didn't flinch, didn't bark, trusted her completely. "How does she—" a resident began. The seal laughed once, broken and humorless. "Because she's the reason this dog made it out alive." That turned heads. "You trained him?" a doctor asked. "No," the seal said. "She saved him." Ava finished wrapping the leg, tying off the bandage clean and tight. She gave the K9 a soft nod. Only then did the dog look back at its handler. Slowly, reluctantly, it stood and returned, never taking its eyes off Ava. The seal wiped at his face with the heel of his hand, embarrassed by the tears he hadn't felt coming. "I watched you bleed out," he said quietly. "You pushed us onto that bird. Told me not to look back." Ava stood. The hallway felt smaller now, closer. "And you didn't." "I followed orders," he said. "I hated myself for it." She met his eyes. "That's why you're alive." A heavy silence settled, not awkward, reverent. A doctor finally spoke. "What happened to Team 9? The seal shook his head slowly. "Classified, then erased. We don't exist on paper anymore." His eyes flicked to Ava again. "Neither do you." Security radios crackled. Someone whispered about calling administration. Someone else whispered about the military. Ava didn't react. She clipped her gloves off, dropped them into a biohazard bin, and stepped back toward the wall, right back into the place everyone had ignored her. But the room wouldn't let her disappear now. The seal pushed himself to his feet with effort, stood straighter despite the pain, and faced her fully. His voice trembled, but it carried. "My dog doesn't salute strangers," he said. "He only salutes command." Ava didn't answer. He took a shaky breath. "Then why?" he asked, eyes burning with disbelief and something like hope. "Does my dog think you outrank the grave?" The hallway didn't breathe again right away. Doctors stood frozen where they were, hands half raised, minds scrambling to catch up to what had just unfolded. The rookie nurse they'd mentally filed away as background noise hadn't just calmed a combat K9, she'd been saluted by one. Not playfully, not accidentally, with intent. Ava stepped back into the thin strip of space she'd occupied before, shoulders squared but posture deliberately neutral, like she was trying to fold herself back into invisibility. It didn't work. The seal watched her the way men watched landmarks they thought had been wiped off the map. His chest rose and fell too fast now. Adrenaline fighting pain, memory clawing its way back to the surface. "You don't get to just vanish," he said hoarsely. "Not after that night." A trauma resident finally found his voice. "Sir, you need to lie back down. Your vitals?" "I'm fine," the seal snapped automatically, then winced as his side reminded him he wasn't. He looked down at the blood, then back up at Ava. "Seen worse." She didn't correct him. She knew better than to argue with a man who measured time in firefights. The attending surgeon cleared his throat. "We need to move forward with treatment, now." He paused, eyes flicking to Ava despite himself. "You should probably stay." That was new. Ava nodded once. Not gratitude, acknowledgement. She moved back toward the gurney, hands calm, eyes focused. The K9 watched every step she took, tail still, ears alert, body angled between her and anyone else who came too close. "What's the dog's name?" she asked softly. The seal blinked. Rook? She almost smiled. Almost. Rook limped forward when she motioned, allowing her to recheck the wrap she'd placed. Her fingers moved with practiced certainty, adjusting pressure by instinct rather than protocol. You didn't ask permission, the surgeon noted, more curious than accusatory now. Ava didn't look up. He didn't need permission. He needed help. That answer landed heavier than it should have. As the team stabilized the seal, whispers began to spread. Low, speculative, edged with disbelief. Someone Googled Team 9 on their phone and found nothing. Someone else pulled up old unit insignias and came up empty. Erased meant erased. Where did you learn to work like that? The surgeon finally asked. Ava paused just long enough to acknowledge the question. Places where hesitation costs lives. The seal let out a short, bitter laugh. She means places where backup never came. That shut the room up. As meds took hold and pain dulled enough to loosen his guard, the seal's voice dropped. They told us you didn't make it, that you went down covering our exfil. Ava's jaw tightened. They told you what they needed you to believe? So you just walked away? He asked. Not accusing, trying to understand. She finished securing a line and finally met his eyes. I walked forward, just not in uniform. The K9 shifted, pressing closer to her leg. Rook's tail brushed her scrub pants like muscle memory. Security hovered at the edges of the hall, uncertain now. This wasn't a threat situation. This was something else. Something they didn't have a checklist for. The charge nurse pulled the surgeon aside, whispering urgently. Administration had been notified. Questions were coming. Big ones. Ma'am, the seal said suddenly, louder now, drawing attention back. You never liked being called that. A few heads snapped toward him. Ava exhaled slowly. Old habits. Old ghosts, he corrected. The surgeon returned, face tight. Hospital policy requires. Ava held up a hand. Not disrespectful, controlled. Let me finish stabilizing him, then I'll step out. The surgeon hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. That was another first. As the team worked, the seal watched her like he was afraid she'd dissolve if he blinked too long. You saved Rook back then, he said quietly. Pulled shrapnel out with your bare hands. I did my job. You did more than that, he insisted. You named him. That made her still. Rook's ears flicked at the sound of his name. You said he needed something to answer to, the seal continued. Something solid. Ava swallowed. He needed a reason to come back. Silence stretched again, thick and weighted. Outside the trauma bay, footsteps echoed, measured, purposeful. Not rushed like doctors, not hesitant like security. Someone who expected doors to open. The surgeon stiffened. That'll be administration. Ava finished taping the last line, then stepped back. He's stable. The seal caught her wrist before she could retreat. Not hard. Grounding. Don't let them disappear you again. She met his gaze. I'm not running. The doors opened. A man in a tailored suit stepped in, eyes sharp, posture rigid. Behind him, 2 others. Hospital execs, badges gleaming. What's going on here? The lead administrator demanded. The room didn't answer right away. The seal spoke first. This nurse saved my life, and my dog's. The administrator scoffed. Sir, with all due respect. With none, the seal cut in. You don't get to talk until you listen. That stunned them. Ava gently freed her wrist and stepped forward. I broke protocol. The administrator seized on that. Then you understand the consequences. I understand responsibility, she replied evenly. There's a difference. The administrator looked ready to argue when Rook suddenly stood, steady despite the limp, and planted himself squarely in front of Ava. A barrier, silent, absolute. No one moved him. The seal's voice dropped, dangerous now. That dog was trained to guard command. He doesn't choose wrong. The administrator hesitated. Who are you people? Ava answered before the seal could. People who don't show up on your charts? For a moment, it looked like she might actually be escorted out. Security shifted closer. The room held its breath. Then the seal spoke again, quieter but sharper. If she leaves, I leave, and I promise you won't like the paperwork that follows. The administrator studied him, weighing options. Finally, he turned to Ava. Will Discuss this later. Ava nodded. I'll be here. The execs withdrew, dignity dented. As the tension eased, the surgeon let out a long breath. You just rewrote my understanding of rookie. Ava gave a small, tired smile. Words don't always mean what you think. The SEAL settled back, exhaustion finally winning. They called you a ghost, he murmured. Guess they were wrong. Ava looked at Rook, then back at him. Ghosts don't leave footprints. As the lights dimmed and the night shift pressed on, the ER returned to motion. But nothing felt the same. People glanced at Ava differently now. Not curiosity. Respect edged with caution. And somewhere between the beeping monitors and the steady breathing of a wounded SEAL and his loyal K9, a truth settled into the room. Some legends don't vanish. They just change uniforms. The hospital didn't sleep, but it changed its posture. Word traveled faster than charts ever did. Nurses glanced up when Ava passed. Doctors lowered their voices. Even security stopped pretending this was routine. Something had shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, but permanent, like a hinge that would never quite close the same way again. The SEAL lay in the trauma bay under dimmed lights now, color back in his face, breathing steadier. Rook rested at the foot of the bed, chin on paws, eyes never leaving Ava. The dog hadn't relaxed like that since the doors burst open. You always did that, the SEAL murmured. Make chaos go quiet. Ava checked the monitor without looking at him. You're still concussed. Try not to narrate. He smiled anyway, a tired curve that pulled at old scars. You still hate sentiment. I hate distractions. Same thing, he said, then winced as a wave of pain rolled through. Damn, still hits like shrapnel. She adjusted his drip, movements economical. You pushed too hard getting off the stretcher. I'd do it again, he said. Seeing you upright changes things. For you, she replied, not for me. He studied her profile, the calm mask, the eyes that missed nothing. They really don't know who you are, do they? They don't need to. A resident hovered at the doorway, indecisive. Ava noticed without turning. Come in, she said. If you're going to stare, at least do it closer. The resident flushed. Sorry, the chief wants an update. Vitals are stabilizing. No internal bleed progression. K9 injury is soft tissue, no fracture. She paused. And no, I'm not leaving the bay. The resident nodded, clearly relieved to have direction. As he left, the SEAL chuckled softly. You just took command without asking. Ava didn't respond. Minutes later, the surgeon returned with a tablet and a look that said he'd been arguing with people who liked policies more than outcomes. Administration wants a statement, he said carefully. From you, Ava exhaled. About the dog? About everything. Then tell them the truth, she said. I saw a patient in distress and intervened. He hesitated. They're asking where you learned all this. She met his eyes for the first time since he walked in. Tell them I learned by not having the luxury to fail. The surgeon swallowed. They won't like that answer. They don't have to, she said. Rook lifted his head as footsteps approached again. Different this time. He didn't growl. He stood. The SEAL's jaw tightened. That's not admin. Two men entered the bay in plain clothes that fit too well, posture too precise. Not suits, not uniforms. The kind of people who blended in by design. Ava felt it before she saw it. The old pressure at the base of her skull. The sense of being counted. The surgeon stiffened. Can I help you? One of the men flashed a badge too quickly to read. We're here to check on the patient. The SEAL laughed once, humorless. Funny. Nobody checked on us when we were bleeding in the dark. The second man ignored him, eyes on Ava now. Nurse Ava Hale? She didn't correct the name. Yes? We'd like a word. Later, she said. He's not cleared. The first man smiled thinly. It won't take long. Ava stepped slightly in front of the bed, not blocking, just positioning. Rook moved with her, shoulder brushing her shin. The SEAL's voice dropped. You two want to rethink your timing. The men exchanged a glance. The first lifted his hands placatingly. We'll wait. They retreated a step but didn't leave. The surgeon leaned close to Ava, whispering, Who are they? She kept her eyes on the monitor. People who hate surprises. As if on cue, an alarm chirped. Minor, but enough to redirect attention. Ava adjusted settings, grounding herself in the present. The SEAL watched her, recognition dawning. They finally caught the scent, he said quietly. Maybe, she replied. Or maybe they always knew. He shifted, grimacing. You shouldn't have stayed. She met his gaze. You shouldn't have come here. A beat. Then a faint smile from him. Fair. Hours blurred. Dawn crept in through narrow windows, washing the ER in gray-blue light. Shift change brought new faces and new whispers. A photo circulated on someone's phone. Rook sitting, paw raised. The caption was already wrong. Ava ignored it. When the K-9 handler arrived, late, flustered, he froze at the sight of Ava. Ma'am, he said instinctively, then corrected himself. Nurse. Rook stood, tail wagging once before settling again. The handler's eyes widened. He doesn't do that. Ava knelt, checking the wrap one last time. He does when he recognizes authority. The handler blinked. Authority? The SEAL answered for her. The kind you don't question. The handler swallowed and nodded, chastened. By mid-morning, the SEAL was cleared for imaging. As they prepped transport, the plainclothes men returned, closer now. We need that word, the first said softly to Ava. Now, she straightened. No. The second man's jaw tightened. It's not optional. Ava looked past them, out toward the hallway where sunlight pooled on the floor. Then make it official. The SEAL shifted, pain flaring, anger sharper. Back off, she said no. The first man raised a hand. Captain, with respect. Don't, the SEAL snapped. You lost the right to that word. Ava felt the old anger stir, hot, dangerous. She tamped it down. You're disrupting patient care. The first man sighed. You always were difficult. That did it. She turned to him fully. You don't know me. His eyes flicked just once to her left wrist, to a scar she'd forgotten was visible. Oh, he said quietly. I do. Before she could respond, a commotion rippled down the hall, raised voices, hurried footsteps. The handler looked up. What now? Ava felt it again, the pressure, the count. Then the SEAL's monitor spiked. Hold him, Ava said, instantly back in motion. He's reacting to the meds. They worked in silence, practiced, and precise. When the numbers settled, the room exhaled. The plainclothes men stepped back, chastened by competence. As transport rolled in, the SEAL caught Ava's hand. Whatever happens next, he said, voice low, don't let them rewrite you. She squeezed once. They won't. As they wheeled him away, Rook walked alongside, head high. Ava watched until they disappeared around the corner. Only then did she turn back to the men waiting for her. Now, the first said. She nodded. Now. They led her toward a quiet conference room. The door closed softly behind them. Ava remained standing. The first man placed a thin folder on the table. No insignia, just a name she hadn't seen in years. He opened it. Inside was a photograph from another life. Green camo, sunlit stone, a palace wall in the background. Ava's breath caught despite herself. The man looked up. You never were just a nurse. Ava didn't sit. She didn't speak. She just waited, because she knew exactly what came next. And somewhere down the hall, a K-9 lifted his head and growled at a sound only he could hear. The room smelled like old paper and disinfectant, two worlds colliding in a way Ava hadn't expected, but somehow always knew would find her again. She didn't sit. The two men across the table waited, practiced in patience, but Ava had learned long ago that silence was a weapon. She let it stretch. Let them feel the imbalance. Her hands rested at her sides, steady, no tremor, no apology. The first man finally spoke. You've been busy. Ava's eyes stayed on the photograph in the open folder. Green camouflage, sunlight off pale stone. A younger version of herself, helmet off, eyes harder than they should have been. You called me here to comment on my schedule? The second man exhaled through his nose. You touched a classified military asset. He's a dog, Ava said flatly. He's a K-9 attached to a deactivated unit. And he was injured, she replied. So I treated him. That unit was buried for a reason. Ava lifted her gaze. So were a lot of good people. The first man leaned back. studying her like a puzzle he didn't enjoy solving. You disappeared, no debrief, no exit interview. One day you were gone, and the next you were wearing scrubs in a civilian hospital. I earned the right to leave. You earned the right to be watched. Ava almost smiled. Almost. Outside the room, the hospital hummed. Shift change, rolling carts, life going on. Inside, time narrowed to a point. You're not here to arrest me, Ava said. You're here because the wrong people noticed the wrong thing. The second man didn't deny it. A Navy SEAL collapsed in an ER. His K-9 broke protocol. Saturday. Saluted. That doesn't happen unless there's conditioning. Ava crossed her arms. Dogs remember who keeps them alive. So do soldiers, the first man added quietly. That landed heavier than he probably intended. Ava's mind flashed. Not to gunfire or blood, but to silence. To nights where the noise stopped and the counting began. To a choice she made once and had never been allowed to forget. You want to know why?